beautiful world. Felt the cool rain on my shoulder. Found something good in this beautiful world. I felt the rain getting colder. Sha la 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 la, sha la 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 la, sha la 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 la, sha la 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 la.
It's morning in the Arabian desert. The place explorer Bertram Thomas called the abode of death. But it's a beautiful place, the kind of place I look for more and more these days. Stark, empty, clean sand that stretches out seemingly forever. Oman defies expectations. It shouldn't, according to the cruel logic of the world, exist. But it does, and it's incredible. The Sultanate of Oman is an absolute monarchy. A predominantly Islamic state, had a vital strategic choke point in the world's oil supply. It is surrounded by some of the trickiest and most contentious powers in the region. And yet, here it is, relatively small, tolerant, welcoming to outsiders, peaceful, and stunningly beautiful. But Oman is facing uncertainty with succession issues and declining oil reserves. The question of what's next is a big, if often unspoken one. So pre-1970, this was a very different place to live, very different country.
Quite simply, there was nothing. We had only 3 schools all over Oman, and only for boys. We had only 2 hospitals.
For the whole country?
Yes, for the whole country. And 9 miles of paved road in Muscat.
And what happened outside of Muscat was really of no concern to
Absolutely.
Leadership.
Yes.
Sheikh Zayed bin Suleiman Al Ghafri is a businessman and the son of a tribal leader. He's the kind of guy who will likely be prominent in the future of the country. The current Sultan replaced his father and took the country really from the 19th century into the 20th century very, very quickly.
Absolutely. His Majesty took over and he changed the whole scene.
This is not a democracy, but everybody, it seems, has genuine affection and respect for the Sultan.
وتنعم المنطقة بالهدوء والاستقرار إن شاء الله.
Sultan Qaboos bin Said Al Said is the much-admired and enigmatic absolute ruler and monarch. He's presided over everything Omani for the last 47 years. In that time, he has raised a nation literally from a dusty, primitive backwater to a modern, functioning, largely secular society.
His His vision was to deliver the services first: electricity, water, healthcare, education. It was like a one-man show.
Usually one-man shows are not a good thing.
That's right. But
historically, seldom does that work out. But, you know, you look around and see how the country is doing now, it's pretty impressive.
It's a tremendous job that His Majesty has done. People just felt like he's the man that they were waiting for to enlighten their life and to open doors for them.
Oman, it should be understood, sits at the top of the Indian Ocean rim. The empire once stretched from Pakistan to East Africa, with important trade routes that reached from southern Africa all the way to the China Straits, Indonesia, and deep into East Asia. Modern Oman is a fraction of that size now, but its DNA, its culture, cuisine, and to some extent attitude toward the outside world is a reflection of that history. Matra is a port town in the capital of Muscat, for centuries a central hub of commerce and trade. One of the first things I notice about the city is its very low slung. This seems like a calculated aesthetic decision.
If you're someone who wants to build your house, you first submit your plans to municipality. And if you're going above a certain height, it's generally frowned upon because the idea is to keep a sort of traditional Omani vernacular.
Aisha Stobi is a curator and PhD student focused on Middle Eastern art history. She is, like many young people here, patriotic to the point of being nerdy, as she puts it.
We have such an old history, and I think Matra is a really great example of that, you know? This is something that functions in our daily life. It functions very similarly to, say, how it would have functioned if you were coming into Matra and going into the souk, say, 200 years ago. And now we're coming to the Corniche, which is...
Oh, I just love that word.
Favorite.
I love any city with a corniche. It's such a beautiful word. The food of Oman is a mix of flavors and ingredients and tastes from Arabia and from all over Oman's former empire. Beit Al-Luban is an old boarding house turned restaurant where you can try dishes like pakora and kashori, which both came back from India, chapati from East Africa, and shua, Oman's classic special event dish. They do one version or another of this all over the world, but shua is special. They slather a goat with a spicy paste consisting of cumin, coriander, red pepper, cinnamon, cardamom, and nutmeg. Then wrap the meat in palm or banana leaves, dig a hole, throw in some meat, cover it up, and leave underground for a day or two over hot coals. Oman has changed in a way that's unique to anywhere I've been. I mean, I haven't seen any place that has sort of maintained the architecture and the character that this country has, and that's a really unusual thing.
It's Oman is the only country, I think, in the Gulf region that kept their tradition. And if you travel outside Muscat, you see the flavor of the old life still there.
Hassan Mir is one of Oman's preeminent fine artists who works in painting and photography. Musna Al-Musaffar is a filmmaker, artist, and provocateur, representing the increasingly vocal point of view of young Omani women in the Middle Eastern art scene.
I think in Arabia we have a tradition of storytelling and saying things without saying them directly. They took this from poetry. They have a certain language with a lot of tact, with a lot of...
Subtext.
Yeah.
There's an unusual mix here. Very graceful, very proud mix of cultures and languages.
I mean, the mix was existing from the beginning.
There is a beauty in being different and understanding the other.
Such a difficult time to make that argument. The whole world seems to be going in exactly the opposite direction. I mean, my country, the last thing anyone seems to want to do is highlight the other.
I think people discuss like fears of multiculturalism, but within Oman, because of our seafaring history, it's a traditional reality. It's our background, it's who we are.
You know about the Vietnam War. What you might not know is that while that conflict raged on, Oman, along with an elite force of British special operators and military advisors, was engaged in a war in the country's southern Dhofar region that was in every way far more vital to American security interests and of far more importance to global strategic and economic concerns.
Where we operated were the frankincense trees. The frankincense that the wise men brought to Christ almost certainly came from the mountains where we were fighting. And you know, sitting behind a machine gun on a track which had been used for 3,000 years, one felt like an intruder in history. And if the trees were cut, you could smell the frankincense. The smell of explosives, the smell of blood, the smell of the food, cardamom, the smell of the tea. I loved it. This was a civil war. Civil wars typically are the worst wars of all. I mean, you know that well enough in your country.
But most people have not heard of it.
No, they haven't. But you'd have heard about it if we'd lost it, I can tell you.
Right. The war began as a local rebellion by the Dhofari people against the autocratic and outdated rule of then Sultan Saeed bin Temur, who had kept his nation isolated and stunted out of concern for his hold on power. What started as a local uprising quickly became a serious, full-blown communist-backed insurgency as Soviet and Chinese influence poured in through Yemen. Ian Gardner remembers the conflict well. He fought in it alongside Omani infantry as a British Royal Marine, and later wrote about the experience in his memoir, In the Service of the Sultan, a rare chronicle of the brutal, incredibly difficult, and almost entirely unknown war fought in the rugged southern mountains.
The old Sultan was not an inhumane man, but he was an old man. He was deeply reactionary, so he wanted to keep his country in a medieval time war. The thing that changed it was the advent of the Japanese transistor radio. For the first time, his people could hear what other Arab countries were doing with their oil, and they wanted some of that.
By the 1920s, Winston Churchill had switched the British Royal Navy's mode of power from coal to oil, and suddenly everything changed. They needed oil and lots of it, which made Oman vital, not for its limited oil resources, but for where it is. The Strait of Hormuz, the Persian Gulf's femoral artery. 20% of the world's oil flows through here, making it one of, if not the, most strategically important waterways on the planet. By 1970, Sultan Temur's counterinsurgency was not going well. He was deposed by his son Qaboos bin Said al-Said in a relatively bloodless coup. Immediately, the young Sultan set out on a different tack for winning the war.
Almost before the shooting had stopped, we would institute a civil aid program, build roads, build a school, build a mosque, build some shops, a clinic. But it was in this way the Sultan was able to demonstrate that he was the one who had his people's best interests at heart, not the communists.
Things seldom work out so well post-insurgency or counterinsurgency. This tactic failed spectacularly in Vietnam, of course. What made the difference here?
In every war in history, you end up living with the other side. And if you can open a respectable door successfully, then the less likely the aftermath is going to be beset with rancor, with hatred, and a thirst for revenge. The Sultan took this very brave, highly intelligent political risk, which I think was the difference, and I think has been the foundation of the unambiguous and enduring peace in this country.
In 1976, the Omanis laid down their weapons and never picked them up again. The resulting peace has lasted for 40 years. And while Oman ain't your system, and it ain't my system, and it's far, far from being either perfect or a Western-style democracy, there is a palpable pride here in the collective identity of being Omani. Notably as well, the Sultan has placed emphasis on the role of women, decreeing, at least as a matter of policy, equal access to education, to work, to political office.
الوحيدة في الحمرة كنت أطبخ. يعني كانوا الناس الحريم يعني يستحين وين يطبخن، يعني كما تقول يعني دنيء وناجحة وما شاء الله يعني، والناس كلها تشتري من عندي وتطلب. قامة واجد يعني الحريم يطبخن. يمكن تو 12 وحدة موجودات في الحمرة هنا يطبخن.
Zahara Al-Afi, daughters Asila and Aisha, and friend Samia Al-Harthi, 4 extraordinary women. What started as a way for Zahara to fund her charity work spawned a lucrative cottage industry of catering for events. Now, rather than using her family money, her business is able to fully finance her work to educate children in the nearby mountain villages.
Simpson?
I was asking myself that I see.
I was on The Simpsons, yes.
Really?
Yes. This is the first time I've been recognized from The Simpsons.
That's really nice.
So some of the money that she's making is going to open schools in rural villages, is that correct?
Not only a part of the money, it goes all of it for them, to build for them the schools and to provide them the education.
وأخصص لهم ناس يعلموهم القرآن، وناس يعلموهم الدين، وناس يعلموهم أمور يعني ذاك يعني العلم بصفة عامة.
Why is this important to you?
يشوفوني ويتعلموا مني العمل التطوعي والتضحية من أجل الآخرين.
Kabuli laham is slow-cooked goat in a rich rice pilaf scented with star anise. Musanef dajaj, a local specialty, are pan-seared dumplings stuffed with chicken, pepper, ginger, turmeric, and onions. And of course, there's Omani bread with honey.
That's a chili. Are you okay with that?
Yes, I like spicy.
Oh, okay.
Good. Very good.
طيوه أصيلة قد في لما أتقطر مخرطة.
Everyone here says that the economy is going to have to shift away from oil towards other industries.
Yeah.
How would you like to prepare your daughters for the future?
نحن يعني في هذا العصر، في هذه الأيام نعيش أيام ذهبية بوجود السلطان قابوس، الله يشفيه.
بيشفيه يا رب، دايما عمرا طويلا ومديدا يا رب.
الحمد لله.
الحمد لله. الحمد لله.
نعيش أيام ذهبية.
صح. أوكي.
لكن لازم نكون مستعدين للمستقبل يعني.
What do the young ladies, when they reach adulthood, what are your hopes and dreams?
إني أكون أخلي نفسي راضية عن نفسي، أكون راضية عن نفسي، أحقق كل أحلامي. أكون يعني أنا أبغى أكون صاحبة أعمال.
And the young lady?
اسمونا وين وانتي؟
أنا كنت يعني أريد أكون أستاذة، بس أمي تريدني أكون رئيسة الجامعة.
ما شاء الله تبارك الرحمن. وين؟
Strong women in this family.
Yeah, I say that. They're very strong ones.
As one moves away from the coast and into the interior, everything changes. This is the country's more conservative core, its spiritual center. Uniquely, Oman's majority is neither Sunni nor Shia, but rather Ibadi, a very old and particularly tolerant non-sectarian form of Islam. This is a distinction we in the West would be wise to notice. Islam is not a monolith. It comes in many forms. Ibadi theology arguably forms the backbone of many of Oman's codes of conduct. It places value on concepts like politeness, acceptance, unity, and understanding. Perhaps as a consequence of that, the Sultanate embraces grace and tact as a matter of foreign policy. Internally, too, Oman has avoided radicalism and sectarian violence. It is considered shameful by Ibadi teachings to draw blood over religious conflicts unless attacked. The terror and bloodshed in neighboring Yemen feels very far away up here. Jebel El Akhdar, the Green Mountain. This area, oh my God, look at this, it's so beautiful.
There are 64 villages at Jebel Akhdar.
64?
64. This village is called Al Ain.
How many generations has your family lived here?
200 years, maybe
200 years?
Yeah, more than 200 years. Can you see all these small farms?
Yeah.
All our grandfathers built that. And they built all these things with only their hands. They don't have any machines. Can you imagine that?
Hamdan al-Sakari, his father Ali, and his uncle Hilal come from a very long line of hard-working farmers. They all grew up here, generation after generation, a tribal area of ancient villages and terraced farmland which have produced pomegranate, nuts, and dates, the premier cash crops of Oman for many centuries. But like so many places I go, so many traditional agricultural communities, the young men and increasingly the young women are looking elsewhere, beyond the farm, to seek higher education and opportunity in the city. This is a common story. I mean, the young men, they go to university, you know.
I have to study there because, you know, the future, and I want to get a good job.
Many young Omanis, they study abroad. They study in America or England, but most of them seem to come back.
You are only going outside to study and get something. That thing you want to return back to your country. I grown up in this village. It's something simple, and I really miss it.
Muscat, you don't like it?
Sometimes.
It's not a life for you? Sometimes?
Sometimes you go there and for big shop malls.
You go to the mall.
At the same time.
So what do we have here?
We have food, traditional food.
Delicious.
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 Yeah. Oh, man, that looks good. What's in the biryani?
This is rice and potato. Yeah. We often eat this meat in celebrations. We call it in Omani mqallai.
Lamb?
Yeah.
Oh, that's fantastic.
You like?
Wow. Never had this.
Really? This is the haris.
Very famous dish.
Yeah.
How do you say delicious in Arabic?
Ladid.
Ladid?
Ladid, yeah.
Ooh.
Ladid.
That's what it is. How did you learn to cook this well?
In Muscat, I live with my friends. I'm not from family. So I have to learn how to cook because no one is taking care about you. You should take care about yourself.
So, if you'd rather be here, why not just continue as your parents and grandparents?
I want to really improve my country economy. I want to invent something.
You're planning for a post-oil Oman, like after the oil. I think the whole country feels this way. I mean, the government feels this way as well. As you say, the country is changing. Look, you have a luxury resort right over there.
Yeah.
The future will look much like this. Resort opens up. They have a big golf course. They have jobs for people to carry golf bags for tourists.
Yeah.
For more money than he can make farming. Is this good or is this bad?
You have to deal with your traditional way and your life. So you want to keep all things safe.
It's more the government responsibility to make balance between advantages and disadvantages of tourism.
But it's a very delicate balance here. These are old and complicated systems that have been working for a very long time.
It's really difficult because there's many sides there. The life is keep changing. You cannot keep everything as it is before.
Do you know this cat or just a,
No.
just a village cat?
It's the garden for this.
It's the garden?
Yeah.
Oman's history and future both are linked inexorably to the sea. The Sultanate began with trade, and it is likely that a new multi-billion-dollar port at Duqm on the coast, intended as a center for international shipping, will play a significant role in the coming years. Omar Abdullah Al-Gilani and Mohammed Shaban spend every free moment at sea, free diving and spearfishing without oxygen for grouper, kingfish, cuttlefish, and tuna. Saeed Al-Namani is the captain and owner of this boat. Saleh Saeed Al-Jabri is a former Navy officer who famously sailed a handmade 9th century-style dhow 3,000 miles to Singapore. The first Omani boats that went out into the sea, around how far back? How many years?
I would say more than 3,000 years.
So BC.
BC, yeah.
Now, in the beginning, it was fishermen.
Yeah.
But then start to trade all up and down East Africa, Iran, Pakistan, up the China Straits, to China.
Yeah. And the evidence about it, even in their China language, there is some Arabic.
Interesting.
It's very interesting.
What did the Chinese have to trade that the Omanis wanted?
They exchanged it with the silk, fabric, and all that kind of things. And of course, coming back was spices. Not only Arabs went there, Indians came as well. So if you look at the eastern coast, they like the spices and all this kind of food.
Well, the people also, I mean, you know, it's a real mix of Arab, Southern Indian, African. I mean, maybe that's why the food's so delicious.
Food is so delicious because we like the taste.
Lunch is fresh sardines grilled over charcoal. Some incredible prawns. And mishakik, an Omani cookout staple. Cubed beef on skewers rubbed with cumin, garlic, and cardamom, then grilled. And local slipper lobsters, of course. And do not forget the cuttlefish masala. Delicious. Wow, the cuttlefish is incredible.
We cannot live without the sea. Our relationship with the sea is too strong.
So you on the water every day?
Myself, I like being in the water. Even 24 hours, I don't mind. This is what's great about Oman itself. People cannot go away from the sea itself, from the sand itself.
What we like is like natural. We want to make it as natural as it looks and it appears and how it was before.
We're born in this beautiful country and we try to look after it. It has to stay because inside the heart here, it's like the flower. If we keep it and look after it, give them the right water, it will grow.
Miles south of Muscat, the pavement ends and you hit this. Sharqiya Sands, on the edge of Ruba al-Hali, the largest sand desert in the world. Once you get up in a soft sand, things change. Everything changes. You change. This is the traditional domain of the Bedouin, who for thousands of years have moved across this harsh, dry, seemingly endless landscape, making it their home. Amr al-Wahibi and his family continue the tradition. Ahmed al-Mawruhi is a hardcore ambassador for the empty places of the desert. He's spent more time there, much of it alone, than just about anyone. The Bedouin have been crossing the empty quarter hundreds of years, thousands of years?
Thousands of years, thousands of years. The Bedouin are the kings of the desert. It's their place, it's their area, and they know how to live and they know how to suffer.
Mark Evans, a polar and desert expedition leader, knows firsthand how difficult the empty quarter can be. Guided by Amr and accompanied by colleague Mohammed Al-Zajali, he recently made the crossing, walking over 600 miles with camels in tow.
The first 12 days of our journey, crossing the empty quarter, we didn't touch our own food at all. And it became a competition to be more generous than the previous.
So you'd meet people out there all along the way?
You would. Even though nobody lived there, people would find you and travel.
حنا يومينا الضيف يوميني نكرم بهذه الاشياء.
Usually the guy who come, he have to open the head.
Okay. Oh, I know just what I'm going for. I got it.
Pull it. Yeah, that is all.
Cheek.
Yeah. Remove the eyes. Here.
Woo.
It's too hot. This is the pot.
Good.
It's good if you have got whiskey or brandy or...
You know, the empty quarter is emptier than it's ever been. It's almost impossible to do what the old explorers did because they relied upon local people being in situ. The Bedouin have migrated to the edge of the deserts, where life is easier, really. But they don't want to let go completely. Amr sends his children to school. in Badir, but yet he wants them to live in the sand where they have the freedom and that connection to their roots.
يعطيني البريك اغسلك مره.
Is someone cross the empty quarter alone? Absolutely alone? No, you need people with you.
You need people.
In my earlier years, I was taking lots of young people on expeditions up to the Arctic, which is very different to here, but the Inuit and the Bedouin have a lot of similarities. They both live on the edge of human tolerance. They're much more open and friendly people. It's like coming home when you come out here. It's very incredibly powerful and enables you to put everything in perspective. Fridtjof Nansen, the Norwegian explorer, said that salvation will not come from the rushing centers of civilization. Deliverance will come from the lonely places. In other words, we all need places to think and calm down and
اختار اقعد في حرف العرقوب وانا مرتاح، قلبي مطمن وروحي مطمن.
There's Trinidad and Tobago. One country, two very different islands, two very different places. One island is what you expected when you arrived wearing flip-flops and a Hawaiian shirt all greased up with cocoa butter. The other ain't about that at all.
I took a walk through this beautiful world, felt the cool rain on my shoulder, found something good in this beautiful world. I felt the rain getting colder. Sha la 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 la, sha la 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 la, sha la 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 la, sha la 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 la.
If I had the choice, I would choose to live back when Calypso brought the news. If I had the choice, I would choose to live right back when Calypso brought the news. No more reporters, no anchormen, no recorder, no pad and pen, no nosy cameras to point and shoot, no red ink to cross out the truth.
Many visitors come to Trinidad for one thing and one thing only, Carnival, which locals say is the biggest party on earth. A pre-Lenten festival of costumes, food, copious drinking, and the kind of dancing you better be good at before trying in public. It's almost 2 months before the party officially starts, but here in Trinidad's capital, Port of Spain, the carnival season has already begun.
I thought it was a pity that you went here during the peak of the carnival season.
I'll tell you something really terrible about myself. Like, I've never been to Mardi Gras, Carnival in Rio, any kind of carnival. Like large numbers of strangers swarming through the streets, dancing in uniforms.
Doesn't do it for you?
No, some of my deepest fears are having to dance or sing in public. Either of these would be terrifying. So this seems like a situation where that might come up, you know? Queen's Park Savannah will be the epicenter of Carnival. But tonight, it's still Trinidad's street food center. My dinner companion for some fried snapper is LaShawn Prescott, who's here to tell me about 2 essential skills necessary for the proper enjoyment of local nightlife. Turns out I am very good at one and suck epically at the other. What is liming?
Liming is like our version of hanging out,
right.
You know. You're with friends, you're chilling, that's liming.
Is there alcohol involved? Chances are, if you're liming,
probably.
you're sipping.
I mean, you can lime without beer.
What about the rum? I haven't had any rum here. How does one drink rum here, and which rum should I be drinking? Does one drink it on the rocks?
One drinks it with Coke.
With Coke?
Yeah, rum and Coke.
But the rum's supposed to be really, really good here.
Yeah.
What do I want to mess it up with Coke for? Okay, so we've established what liming is. What is whining?
The technical term is the circumduction of the hips. And it's a style of dance. And if you're not used to the culture, you don't understand what it means, you can interpret it the wrong way. When you see it for the first time, you can think it's seductive, you can think it's sexual. But people can whine on each other and not really mean anything. I can whine on you and it doesn't mean that I want to take you home, you know? It's something that's really about freedom of expression of self. And it's something that crosses ages, races, ethnicities, especially during carnival time. You see people from high status and people who are, you know, lower class. They both whine together. You know, the barriers are no longer there. It's all just a mix of all the different ethnicities and stuff.
The faces you see in the streets are African, Indian, Chinese, Middle Eastern in features, and every shade of mix in between. This patchwork of ethnic identities and colors is a direct legacy of Trinidad's colonial past. Located at the southern end of the Caribbean Sea, 7 miles offshore from Venezuela, Trinidad and Tobago have long been important ports of call. Like a lot of islands in the area, everybody's been through here at one point or another. The usual European hunters of fortune. The Spanish came looking for gold. Then the Dutch, French, and British took their turns at the real money of the time, sugar. An economy built on plantation labor and slavery. Finally, the island hit the big money: oil. A pair of seemingly unrelated events had a big impact on the island's musical culture. During World War II, the U.S. Navy built an oil depot to supply overseas strategic needs. And decades earlier, the ruling British had banned drums made from traditional-style animal skins after a series of riots they insisted had been inspired by African drumming. One improvises in such circumstances, and all those oil drums were repurposed. This is Phase 2, one of only 11 large steel bands taking part in the worldwide competition Panorama that happens in a few weeks. Winner gets 150 grand. They've taken home the prize 7 times, in no small part due to this man, Lennox Bugsy Sharp. The rehearsal space is called a panyard, and if you're lucky, somebody nearby is making this: corn soup, split pea broth, dumplings, and of course, corn. Kim Johnson is a local journalist and historian who knows about this stuff. It's far more complex than you think. Wow. I gotta tell you, that was incredible. I've heard a lot of, little steel drum bands around the Caribbean, but nothing like that. All percussion, right? 100%.
Yes.
How did your interest in this develop?
I grew up here. Later, I became a writer. I discovered there were just hundreds of stories. Because in the early days, up until the 60s, the steel bands were partly like street gangs. They would fight with one another. The West Side Story, right? Kind of thing. The steel bands doubled as that. So I just got fascinated by tracking down all of these pioneers and getting their stories and how they got involved.
I'll be 64 years this year. I played music since a little kid.
Yeah, these stories that he grew up with them in one of his backyards. So when he was about 3 years old, he was going out playing with them.
Bugsy composes his pieces by layering different types of drums on top of each other. The engine room, made of unpitched percussion, lays down the groove. Next, a section of 6 bass pans drops a bass line. The guitar and cello pans add harmonies that sound like strumming. And the frontline pans play the melody. The result, a symphonic wall of sound.
I would like someday to marry this with a big symphony orchestra. Yeah, Anthony, that's my dream.
It's because of the music Africans survived slavery. Not just physically, survived psychically. It's a question of just improvising instruments.
Holy crap. Okay. This is a challenge. People keep coming up to me in the street. The first thing they say is, have you had doubles yet? Did you get a doubles yet? So, I'm eating doubles, all right? Doubles are a Caribbean take on the Indian chana bhatura. Two floppy, tender pieces of soft Indian-style bread loaded with a wet heap of curried chickpeas, pepper sauce, and mango. Structurally, I have questions here. I don't want seepage. Seepage is never good. If someone uses seepage in a sentence, nothing good is going to happen. I'm going to suck the paper. I don't think there's meat in here. But I still like it. It's really, really good. A half-century after Trinidad became independent of the British Empire, there are surprisingly few architectural remnants. But the face of the country and its population were forever changed when slavery ended in 1834, and Great Britain found itself in need of cheap, if not free, labor to work the plantations. They found it in East India.
At the abolition of slavery, the plantation owners desperately needed to find labor to fill the void created by the slaves who turned their backs on the plantation for obvious reasons. And they looked around, they tried Portuguese, they tried Chinese, they tried many communities until they found out that the Indians were the best suited because they were already planting sugarcane in India successfully.
Between the end of outright slavery and the beginning of World War I, 150,000 indentured servants were brought here from India. Indentured servitude is slavery by another name. The people brought here from India were bought, sold, and treated like property. But we're told that if they completed 5 years of often backbreaking labor, they would be set free. Noon on a Monday, ordinarily a work day, but today the Singh family is having a boys' river line. Chan, the patriarch, is a retired diplomat. His son, Keshav, is a music producer. Uncle Charlie is in charge of the cooking. How far back did the family go?
This family is going back to 1845.
1845. Those were hard times. Life was not good for the family in India.
There was poverty, there was wars and all sorts of things. And yes, they came into real hard times here because the indentured immigrant from India replaced the liberated slaves, and the conditions were not very different.
Difficult times, but it was a means to social mobility and away from their situation in India.
We are products, descendants of that generation.
Start with one whole duck, hack into pieces, rub with lime juice, season with hot peppers, garlic, and the tropical herb shadow beni. Add generous helpings of masala and curry powder. Marinate for a bit, then sear in oil, then simmer in coconut milk until tender. Man, that's good. That's really good. We better kill some more ducks, because that is...
When we have it like this, when we're drinking before the actual meal, it's like an appetizer, but we call it cutters because it cuts The alcohol.
Right, I'm sobering up as we speak. So, look, you're all Trinidadian.
Yeah.
Trinidad first, Indian second.
Yes, I mean, when the Indians came, 160-something years ago, there was a disconnect with the motherland.
Most of these Indians were promised that they were going for a short tenure to make a lot of money and then return home.
They gave return passage or land.
So when the first Indians took the option to go back, couldn't find their families.
Right.
And those who found their families were rejected because they said, you guys abandoned us for 5 years.
Wow.
You may as well take that 5 acres of land and stay there. So there's no closure to descendants like us who have not found any connection between our families in India.
Soft paratha dough is cooked on a massive tawa and slathered with ghee. But here, just as it's reaching peak flakiness, it gets a beating.
Here they call it bust-up shot, which means burst-up shirt.
Burst-up shirt.
Because they make a huge paratha and then they whack it with 2 sticks.
Oh, okay. I thought they were talking about what's going to happen to my shirt. What about skin color? Look, you look at Jamaica, you look at Haiti. I don't get what they say, but what they do is it's still a powerful determinant of where your status is in the power structure.
Yeah.
Does that exist here?
It's not something that has consumed our imagination. Being Trinidadian is not necessarily color tone oriented, but it's more, and I think what people really revel and enjoy is the common experiences. The food is the glue that binds a society together.
In spite of the problem that we have here, we are still one of the most harmonious, multi-ethnic societies in the world. And the multi-ethnicity of Trinidad and Tobago, multi-religious tolerance, are examples for the world to follow. We are a small island, and if you don't learn to live together, you have to live in the sea. We have to.
All right.
Why? Trinidad is nice. Trinidad is a paradise. Hey. Trinidad is nice. Trinidad is a paradise. Now, ding, 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 la 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 la.
Yeah, my theory was always the whole world is going to look like Trinidad in 100 years. Anyway.
Great world.
Well, I think so. Cheers to that.
Cheers, cheers.
Trinidad is nice. Trinidad is a paradise. Why Trinidad is nice? Trinidad is a paradise. Thank you.
It started in 1898, more than 100 years ago. Most of the Christians were being persecuted by the Turks. So there was an exodus of Christians leaving Syria. They boarded the ships from Beirut, and as long as it was heading west, they thought they were going to America. Many of our parents landed in Trinidad, and that's when we started. That's the first generation.
Just outside of Port of Spain, Bayshore is one of the priciest neighborhoods in the country. I'm here as a guest of the Sabga Abouds, a successful family of Lebanese Syrians.
Look, isn't this amazing?
Beirut.
Yes, like no arak.
I do indeed.
Would you like arak?
A little ice and some water would
be perfect. My drink of choice is Grey Goose and coconut water.
The family's story is not an uncommon one. The first members came here during the collapse of the Ottoman Empire, arriving penniless. They worked their way up as textile merchants and branched out to run businesses that sell everything from medical equipment to real estate. And how large is the community now in Trinidad?
A little under 5,000.
That's still a fairly small percentage of the...
Extremely small. Actually, we are the smallest ethnic group in Trinidad.
But the most powerful, almost the most powerful. Smallest, but the most powerful, huh?
That's not bragging. Syrian Lebanese merchant class are generally seen as the elite.
Actually, I'm very big in the food business. I have 120 restaurants. Call me the Starbucks of the Caribbean.
I can't tell you how happy I am about this meal. I love the food.
This is raw kibbe.
Best raw kibbe you'll ever eat in your life.
Yeah, this is the fried version, which is stuffed with the nice stuffing. And then we have the typical hummus. This is muhamra, which is made from chili paste and ground nuts, the best muhamra in Trinidad. Then we have falafel patties. We have grilled wings with garlic, which is every Arab loves. Fish in tahini sauce. You ever had that?
Yeah, beautiful.
I'm gonna pour some olive oil over our lovely things, because olive oil is a must.
I mean, and how closely do people stay in contact with family or relatives back in Lebanon or Syria? If at all?
Not very much.
We are Trinidadians too. As much as we are Lebanese and Syrian, we are Trinidadians. Trinidad has been good to us, and we know it.
But life is good here in Trinidad. Life is very good. But there is a measure of concern in the fact that at one time we used to have a huge middle class, which was a sort of a security in terms of any possible conflict between the haves and the have-not. But now that's eroding, and they're getting poorer. So they're starting to get angry.
What do you think the biggest danger is right now?
Civil commotion.
Civil commotion.
Yeah. We have a crime problem related to gangs, gang warfare.
Gang warfare. It ain't all good for everybody here by a long shot. Trinidad, with a population of only 1.3 million people, had 460 murders last year, giving Port of Spain a per capita murder rate higher than Detroit, Oakland, or Chicago. Mark Besant covers the subjects of drug and gang-related violence as an investigative journalist. People want you dead.
You could say that.
Who wants you dead, do you think?
Well, 2 years ago, I did a piece about the state prosecutor, Dana Sital, who was shot dead.
When State Prosecutor Dana Sital left the Mapao car park just before midnight on May 3rd, she had no inclination it would be her last moments alive.
When Mark began to look into the murder of the prosecutor, an informant told him there was a $20,000 contract on his life.
They had people following me over a period of time, some law enforcement officers and so on. So my company put me on a plane. I stayed under an assumed name for about 3 months in a location outside of Trinidad.
Generally speaking, when people like that want you dead, they get you. Why are you back?
I guess, to quote from a great U.S. journalist, Walter Cronkite, it's not what we want people to know, it's what they need to know. We need to have people held accountable for certain things. With drug trafficking being one of the biggest businesses in the world, Trinidad continues to be a major transshipment point for drug dealers to get that product out to North America and to Europe. So you find now the explosion of violence that we have is for those that are involved locally with the drug trafficking, this fight for territory.
An estimated $3.5 billion worth of narcotics move through the Caribbean each year. Trinidad's porous borders, busy port, proximity to Venezuela, and the inevitable corruption that comes with numbers and threats like that make it, unfortunately, an ideal transshipment point. How bad is high-level corruption alleged to be?
Fairly deep. I think that the complicity comes across the law enforcement agencies, customs, police officers, even at higher levels.
And with corruption, poverty, hopelessness, add some radical ideology to that, and Trinidad has proved relatively fertile ground for the recruitment of ISIS fighters and terrorists.
It's quite alarming, Trinidadian nationals being one of the highest in the region, going to Syria. And it's over 100 on a list, an FBI list. They feel that it's the calling from ISIS that they need to go.
So what's the future look like? What do you think? How's it gonna go?
Wow, that's a loaded question. There are really good people here in Trinidad. There are really, really good people that can make a difference on all fronts. If we go down the path that we're going down, they will be all bad.
In 1990, the radical Islamic group Jamaat al-Muslimin laid siege to Trinidad's parliament, claiming they were responding to rising inequality, poverty, and religious discrimination. What ensued was a violent and terrifying disaster. 26 people were killed in skirmishes, and the hostage takers, would-be revolutionaries, gave up in exchange for clemency after 6 days. Little changed. Mohammed Muakil's father took part in the attempted coup. He grew up, in fact, in the Jamaat al-Muslimin compound. But he's chosen to take a different path: music. He's the lead singer of Freetown Collective, a band named after a Port of Spain neighborhood that was once a settlement for freed slaves.
They say we can't write no love songs, live fast and we die young. They say we doomed to fail, yeah. They say we doomed to fail. They say we prone to violence and a sinking silence. They don't know what they say. No.
Much like a lot of reggae, his music calls out the social ills that have been disproportionately visited on the Afro-Caribbean population.
I see bodies lying in the streets, nations collapse in the midday. Lord, I need to cool my head. They're calling it a brave new world, freedom for brave new boys and girls. What good is freedom if you're dead?
You look around my city right now, and a lot of young people are choosing death over life because the life that they look at doesn't feel like it's substantiated by anything.
In the Freetown neighborhood now called Belmont, he lives with his 81-year-old granny, Neela Natu.
The thing is that recently we've had a lot of people who I've known, who I grew up with, who've gone to fight in Syria, who've left here. I mean, they will tell you that the official count is 140. I would say it's more.
You'd say it's more?
I'd say it's more.
And why do you think people would go?
I'd have to go back into my childhood to explain that to you. The coup that happened here happened when I was 6 years old. And you had all these young people in there who had this idea, we're going to build this thing. There's this community that's going to stand up against what's going on in Trinidad, that's going to stand up against the drugs and stand up against poverty and stand up against crime, and nothing happened.
In none of these causes, religious fundamentalism or fervor has not come up. Every issue you've mentioned so far has been perceived inadequacy of social justice.
Right, yeah.
So these kids going off to Syria, they have any idea what they're doing? Or are they just pissed off?
No, they do not. People say that poverty breeds crime. I don't think poverty breeds crime in a sense. I think exclusion breeds crime. Because if I truly care for you, if I feel like you are a part of the thing that I exist in, then I won't hurt you. I might come in your house and steal some food. But when you see that kind of violence being enacted, you have to ask yourself, it's not just somebody saying, I need this tablecloth, I'm gonna take this. No, I want this tablecloth. And you've had this tablecloth for too long. So you know what? I'm gonna take this out on you. This is gonna happen, that's gonna happen. And that's what we're seeing now. I mean, how long can people put up with something before they decide this is enough? You know what I mean?
Would you say that Carnival and that Carnival attitude, the liming culture, might as well be a brilliant strategy to narcotize the people into being satisfied with the status quo?
Everything here is somehow designed to pacify it without us really realizing. So our music, which is supposed to give us adrenaline, as well as sleeping pills sometimes, it's just doling out sleeping pills. Like, go ahead, enjoy yourself. Enjoy yourself, enjoy yourself. You're a Trini. Trini means fun-loving and happy and whatever, despite whatever it is.
It's a big and delicious home-cooked meal.
I caught this myself.
Really?
Yes, sir.
Red snapper?
Yeah.
The snapper is seasoned with lime juice, shadow benny, and onion. What's this dish called? Is there a name for it?
This is called oil down.
Oil down?
Yeah.
For oil down, they season breadfruit and meat with dasheen and green figs, then simmer in coconut milk.
And, well, she uses pork, as you can see, which I know I can't have any, so that's okay.
Now, your grandma, not a Muslim.
No, the Roman Catholic.
Roman Catholic.
Of Roman Catholics.
Old school.
Sacred Heart up on the wall.
I got a kind of a perfect one for you, so you would have it.
Oh, beautiful, thank you.
Pastel.
This is mostly when the Spaniards were here, introduced this. It's a Spanish thing.
Pastels are the Caribbean cousin to the tamale. Minced beef is wrapped in cornmeal dough, then in banana leaf, then steamed.
She will feed you till you burst, like any grandmother, you know, right? Yeah.
I'd be well looked after.
And that is once a year.
So when do these ordinarily...
Christmas time.
Christmas time. This is very, very delicious.
Thank you very much. And one thing I vex about, why he didn't put ice in his glass?
It's good, it's fine.
So he must say thanks or whatever. You may tell Mohammed it's not good.
So you have that generation. Very proper. Like, very, very proper. And one of the things about Trinidad is that...
Mohammed, don't bad talk me.
I'm not bad talking. I only speak the truth. That generation very much believed in independence and that this nation would be something. And then they told their children, study and come and help this nation, build this nation, it's going to be something. And that generation, which was my parents, they did that.
Right.
And then they had kids, you know? And all of a sudden it was like, okay, all these things y'all been saying about building a nation and whatever, how come I'm seeing these people benefiting and I'm not? How come I'm seeing this, I'm seeing that, I'm seeing that? And there were very few answers, you know what I mean?
So who runs this country?
Like everywhere else, that 1%, like everywhere else.
Everybody here is very eager to tell you what a wonderful mix it is. And the food, if you look at it, is this incredibly harmonious stew pot. But I guess life doesn't work as well as food.
No, the only thing we've agreed on in this place is how much salt to put in anything. So that's the only thing we've agreed on.
Man, we on a mission. Our whole world to change. Yeah. Our whole world to change.
Trinidad, it should be pointed out right now before you start packing your Speedo and your cocoa butter, is an industrial island. And like so many places, industrialization is changing the landscape here. But some things persist, remain, echo from all the way back then. When West African slaves would covertly do this. Kalinda.
This martial art, based on our research, is maybe 500-600 years old.
Stick fighting variations occur throughout the Caribbean, but in Trinidad and Tobago, it's like deep in the blood.
This martial art was illegal for many, many years, yes?
Yeah.
I mean, certainly during slavery times, it was illegal.
To this date, I believe there's still laws on our books that ban this stick, and if you're caught with it, you could go to jail.
The laws of slavery times forced this sport underground. Like capoeira, it often had to be disguised as a dance. But this ain't no dance.
The guys with the whip and the guys with the stick were all the guys saying, you have not broken us. We will continue to resist to the ends of time.
Rondell Benjamin and Keegan Taylor studied fighting styles from around the world before coming around to their own homegrown martial art. Now, what's legal?
What's not legal is...
Let's say what's not legal.
I can't hit to the legs.
You can't? Oh, damn, because that would be the first thing I'd think of. I'm thinking, I gotta get that knee in particular.
Now, to be honest, in stick fighting, legal and illegal is a concept, but it doesn't stop that kind of stuff from happening.
Right. But I mean, let's face it, this is a pretty heavy object.
Yeah.
I get a good swing, a tee off, and I get a clean shot on the head. This is what the New York Police Department would call a deadly weapon.
Yes, sir.
If I'm fighting, if I'm really fighting, I'm a monster. I gotta lick you down, I gotta kill you, I gotta dig you up, I gotta bury you, I gotta murder you, I gotta take you out. The demon in me is gonna come out, but I call that demon to walk.
King David is one of the old school street fighters who has kept this form from fading over the years. As in Brazil and the Deep South, African slaves were given little to work with when it came time for the meal. More often than not, if they wanted meat, they had to make do with what the slave masters did not want. A tongue here, cow foot there. Here, as elsewhere, they figured out how to make something delicious and tender from whatever there was. Like souse, pigfoot is pickled in shadow beni, onions, and hot peppers, and then topped off with cucumbers. This is a martial art. You either win or you lose.
Correct.
How do you win? What decides winner?
Who draws blood first win. All it requires is the end result. All you have to do is cut the guy.
Blood is blood.
What's the worst injury you've ever had in a fight?
This finger.
What's the worst injury you've seen in a fight?
I see a man lost the eye. So I saw a man die. You have to be a real warrior, born fighter, to stand up there and face that demon, which walking like a man.
Miles east of Trinidad, its sister island, Tobago. A whole different vibe around here. More like what you'd hope for when you waddle away from the buffet on the SS Norwalk cruise ship. Lazy beach days, boat drinks, villas, all set to a calypso beat. In the 1800s, slaves would sing the news and gossip of the day in a Creole patois to an African beat. Later, musicians added European-style melodies, and calypso was born. The longtime reigning queen of this music, an absolute pioneer of the form, is Calypso Rose.
Say that I reign too long, forgetting that the Constitution is strong. Instead of respecting the long reign, they make it threat to take down the man. I've been breaking down walls ever since I was told they would stand up tall and strong like a wrecking drum. I would knock them down.
She was the first woman to win the Calypso King title, which tells you what the environment was like at the time for a female artist.
Everywhere I reign supreme, the one and only Calypso Queen. No man alive or dead could come and take me from off my head.
Rose grew up in a large and strict Baptist family in Tobago until she was 9 years old and was sent to live with her aunt in Trinidad. So she grew up with a foot in each island.
What's the difference between growing up in Trinidad and growing up in Tobago?
It's much different. Tobagonians are 99.5% African. They are African slave descendants. The culture is more African. And this here is the cornmeal cuckoo. They call it fufu in Africa. When Tobago, they say cuckoo.
And this is callaloo.
And this is the callaloo made from the leaves of dasheen, you know? But the great thing is the crab. Everybody come to Tobago and must eat crab and dumplings. The dry coconut, they grated the coconut, and the juice of that coconut, they put it in the pot with the little ingredients like tomato, onion, chive, and your curry.
Crunch it up.
Good teeth. If you have false teeth, be careful.
All right. So far, so good. Here's what really fascinates me is you started singing calypso music and writing songs.
Of course.
At a time when it was only men. Your
My father
was not
against it.
against it.
My father was spiritual Baptist minister. My father said calypso belongs to the devil.
Calypso belongs to the devil, but it also belonged to men. And here you are at age 15 Age 13. Doing 13.
Age 13, I started
doing
writing.
what was considered a completely revolutionary thing. What was it about you that made you strong enough and different enough and determined enough to choose to do such a difficult and unusual thing when everybody was against it?
My fans. Because some people at home, they're sad, they're going through so much financially, economically, they're being abused by the spouse, and they come out to have a good time. And when they come out, I bring joy to their heart.
So is making beautiful things enough?
Yes, making beautiful things enough. But when you start thinking consciously and beautiful things, like how the sea is rolling there, how the sea is moving, moving, moving. Making beautiful things is enough.
It is enough.
No island in the sun is paradise on Earth, however it might look from the concrete blocks, glass cubicles, or wood boxes we may live in. And all the dancing and music and great food in the world can never hold together by itself what would keep us apart. What might look like a utopian stew of ethnicities and cultures living together under gently swaying palms is, of course, a far more complicated matter. But Trinidad has done better than most, and in proud and unique style.